Hi everyone, welcome to Vermont Farmers Food Center's first edition of our new series, Food for Thought. My name is Heidi Lynch. I'm newly serving as the Executive Director at Vermont Farmers Food Center. I've been with the organization for the past 8 years, primarily working on the pharmacy project, so excited to be growing with the organization in this new role, and I'm joined by Greg Cox.
Thank you, Heidi.
Yep.
I'm the one of the founders and the board president, and so excited to be here. Many of you know that the food center has been, this is our 10th year anniversary.
Yep, that's what we're here to celebrate.
Yeah, we're celebrating.
Believe it or not, this is for 10 years.
And it was, it's kind of fitting that Heidi today brought our very first annual report, and it outlines so much of what our vision was 10 years ago, and now looking back, we can see that we are doing and have done and are beginning to really do everything that we talked about. Oh, we've added a lot.
That's right.
Because we're not stagnant, and every day presents new opportunities. And one of the things that I'm proudest of is that the Vermont Farmers Food Center is a entrepreneurial organization that can have the power and strength of a large ship, but can turn like a small rowboat. We can turn on a dime and take advantage of those opportunities.
That's right. Yep. So as Greg said, we sort of realized it, I think, when this year, when it turned the calendar year, we're like, wait a minute, it's our 10-year anniversary, because we're so busy doing all the things that we're doing. So we just found it to be a wonderful moment to celebrate with the community in various ways, including this series that we're doing, the 10 years, and looking back on where we've come and what we've done, and really celebrating that energy from the early days of how truly it was a grassroots community initiative that created the physical space of the Vermont Farmers Food Center, and that same energy has carried us to this 10-year mark and will in this next decade. So as Greg said, it's been fun for us to look back on some of these, materials in our archives from our early days, and just right here, the timeliness, this in our report stating that Vermont Farmers Food Center became officially incorporated on April 9th of 2012. So literally the spring 10 years
exactly.
ago.
10 years.
So Greg, we're that was such an exciting moment, but maybe you can share a little bit of the backstory of how, how that moment, what was going on, and how you brought the pieces together to be, incorporating as a, separate entity than the farmers market, and just that role that the market played in catalyzing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, everyone's so familiar with the Rutland Farmers Market, and it is, in my opinion, the most dynamic farmers market in the state, especially when you consider that we are, technology gets in the way. Let me turn that off. And this was an initiative that was way before VFFC started, and we were like, creating a year-round local food system requires that everyone eat 12 months a year, not 6 months a year. So we were one of the first, I think we were the first farmers market, 52 weeks a year, the farmers market that never ended. Bill Clark, who was always an innovator, was board president of the farmers market at the time, and he really said, we need to always advance and do better things. Probably the greatest board president and board member that I've ever seen, because every time he made a decision, it represented the whole, not self-interest. And we threw out the idea, and we went to the creative economy. Mark Foley stepped forward and said, what about the back warehouse in the co-op?
Right, so you were looking for a space to create that 52 weeks a year access to local food.
And so we found that space, we worked it out, we dealt with we had a lot of good positive conversations with the co-op. And there was a little apprehension at the beginning, but we made it happen. We opened up in 2007, winter of 2007, 42 spaces. We had 50 vendors on a waiting list, not vendors, 50 businesses on a waiting list, which we immediately realized that we needed a bigger boat, a bigger space. So this is where this idea of having our own space, which Bill Clark had pushed for decades, and we got a small grant from NOFA Vermont, and we looked at 9 different sites.
In Rutland.
In Rutland. And we had a priority list. One of the priorities was as close to downtown as possible because we felt that was absolutely critical to the community. And we settled on 251 West Street. We approached, we had a small board. We did a feasibility study from that grant, which showed that we needed to have a separate entity that was in fact a 501c3, so that we could gather grants and tax deductible contributions and pull this off.
So it was the Vermont Farmers Market
Vermont
at the time,
Farmers Market,
and that collective,
and that was the initiative.
Yep. And then by moving to a 501c3, like you said, a separate entity
Separate
could then
entity.
leverage the input from the rest of the community, making the donations and grants and things like that to
and
to
so we started
owners.
out 4 farmers and 1 nurse, small board. Driven, we worked with the Gartners. That was anybody that can remember was around. That was Mincer Brothers, and we did a feasibility study on that. Created a business plan. Had a phase 1 environmental study in hand. Went through Brownsfield, and basically we were like good to go. And
to make the purchase.
The Gartners held a note, deferred all payments, penalties, and interest until we had our act together and had the farmers market as our anchor tenant, and then we were working with several other organizations to rent space.
To co-locate at that space, right? So
a food center.
A true food center, right? So as you were saying, so physically, all the steps that it takes to okay, we've identified a space, and then being that, blighted former industrial property in the middle of downtown, like you said, that
the
gave
most visible
access point. It's a highly visible point. So then once there's ownership of the space under Vermont Farmers Food Center as this new 501c3, that's when the community showed up in unprecedented ways. That was continues to be the root of how we do things at the farm center. But it was everything from creative financing and donations to literally showing up with dumpsters. I think I read here there was 6 30 cubic yard dumpsters that were filled of debris from that site, and it was just all hands on deck, right? Like sports teams, community, faith communities, everyone, volunteers.
It was pretty amazing. And they made a video about it.
I was just going to say that, on our website.
On our website, Art Jones, who did Blood in This Town, came up one weekend while we were working there.
Caught wind of the project, right?
Caught wind of the project, stopped by, and he goes, whoa, I'm coming up with a film crew. This is absolutely amazing. And he did 2 6-minute videos. One during renovation and one after the farmers market was open.
Right.
Truly a miracle, but a community miracle.
Right, a community, and because that's what it took. So we started organizing. Right, there was volunteer days on Sundays.
Every Sunday.
Yep, and people would just show up, and there was a project leader, right, that was sort of helping.
Yes, we had David O'Rourke, who was absolutely critical to this project. David actually wrote the first year-end, the annual report. He did the feasibility study, helped put together the business plan, coordinated the activities and the contractors to do it. Every Sunday, it doesn't show, but there's a giant open overhead door. That overhead door was open every Sunday, and community members brought food for anybody and everybody to eat. We invited everybody that was walking by to come in. You didn't have to work, but you certainly had to eat.
Yeah, that's right, because there's a food center.
Breaking bread together.
We had to do it. And I think one of, like you said, not only sort of the, organizing skills and things like that, but then especially the farming community showing up with tractors and backhoes and things to do the physical work on the campus as well, right? And painting.
There was one day, but actually there were several days in a row, where we had 3 excavators and a backhoe and a bulldozer on site all day, all pro bono.
Right, yeah.
It was unbelievable. And we were like, for a while, because we closed on July 5th, we opened on November 3rd.
Right.
We had to put almost $200,000 in renovations in that building to make it safe and legal.
Yep. Right.
New sprinkler, electrical, water. We had to go through all the fire safety.
Right.
Every one of those windows was bought by somebody in this community.
Yep, yep. And that's where, like, there was a fundraising team, right?
Yeah.
So there was a behind-the-scenes team also driving all of that fundraising and doing some really creative financing, right? There was these loans that community members made.
5%, loans,
Yep.
and 10 years later, we have paid them all off.
Right.
We have refinanced. We are in very good financial shape.
Right.
And now other folks are coming in. You may be aware, we've got a $1.68 million appropriations from Congressman Welsh.
Yep.
We have won grant after grant. Thank you, Heidi, and
We've
your
been working
team.
on it, right? Yeah, we're growing. So I think like those roots of this really grassroots fundraising to literally, I'm just looking at some of the other, mementos we bought from our past, but this was one of our fundraising pieces. The Vermont Farmers Market has a new home, and then inside, we were talking about what we were doing and opportunity for a community to donate, and they were saying, own your food future, right? So I think that everybody really felt that spirit of, showing up and literally with hands and, creative thinking to, own our food future. And this is what it looked like, right? To create a space where we could, the farmers market could be held every week. We could do these other community projects and programs that benefit, just eaters, right? We all eat, but then also all of the businesses, right, that had opportunities to, grow or develop their products and synergies like that. And I think that's something that always strikes me is that, the networks and webs that we build by, surrounding around food. So I think the conversations that happen at market, right, like the collaborations, and then just the innovation, right, of product of somebody's like a jam maker or a salsa maker, and then they see somebody else's peppers and they make that link right now. That's
exactly what we were there for. Primary market, primary storage, value added, relationships, make Vermont salsa out of Vermont tomatoes. Sugar Bob, Vermont maple sriracha, has now relationships with many of the farmers that attend the farmers market, and he's buying peppers and tomatoes and vinegars and other items from the vineyards, and it becomes synergistic, and it builds everyone's business, and that's what we envisioned, and it's actually what's happening.
It's happening, right? And as Greg's mentioning, so the anchor tenants, right? So part of the space is co-locating other food-based businesses and mission-oriented businesses so that we can, support each other, by being able to maintain that space and then grow together, as you're saying. So, and that's really, an exciting part of our next phase here that we're, onto the next aspects of development of the projects. And so, as Greg was mentioning, some of our early, when we stated our mission, to increase access and availability of locally produced food through the development of infrastructure, educational programs, and then markets necessary for growth. And I think markets, and then we've evolved that to also just food access in general, right? So it's just access points, markets being one of them, right? And evolving, so we've been doing that. And then some of our other mission was to form those partnerships, right? And networks, so that we're creatively linking in with other, throughout the state and region to work with each other, right? And complement activities, and also recreate, programs that have been successful in one community. So other communities.
And we've done that with pharmacy. Thank you very much, Heidi, because you were originally hired as a coordinator for the pharmacy project. Pharmacy being FARM.
Food is medicine.
Food is medicine, and that program grew to great heights under years. Is actually recognized in the state as one of the best programs, and we've actually expanded that and not sold, but given the information necessary for that program to grow in other communities.
That's right. Yep.
And it now exists with in Addison County under Acorn's umbrella, and we're working with.
There's a whole community of practice now, actually.
Yeah,
that linking,
statewide.
That food environment. I think, like you said too, that open exchange, and sharing. Like we learn from each other too. Like we've been doing our pharmacy. We're going into our 8th year now, and some of the newer ones, they've developed or innovated the program in ways that we could use that here, right? So that's where that open exchange just again strengthens the communities and. And then everyone can, be leveraged by the collective work as well.
You do the right thing. It's not intellectual property that needs to be owned and sold.
Right, and we learned
it. Needs to be shared.
We were just following in the footsteps of others, that were already onto that program too.
Absolutely.
And then one of our other, early mission activities that we talked about was developing farmer training program, and you've really done that, incubated at your own farm. But that's an aspect that we absolutely see heading into the future is critical, is that we can build infrastructure and talk about the need for a resilient food system, as we've been saying and seeing just what the pandemic exposed in terms of the fragility of national supply chains. So we can build centers like the Farm Center and choose to shop at markets, but then the critical piece of it is that people are farming and growing food, and that there's land in farming and in a working landscape, and not only being developed. So that's
and we all know the graying of America, the graying of the world, pretty much. And it's the graying of farmers, too. And unfortunately, most farmers are my age. And so early on, we were like, if we're going to take this $2 to $3 billion industry in Vermont, because that's collectively what we spend to feed ourselves.
Wow.
And we started out at 6%.
Wow.
And we, under a lot of different programs statewide, we've built it up to about 12%. But that still means that 78%
we're relying on outside
is
resources.
outside. So our money leaks across our borders, jobs follow dollars. So we were like, we need to get more farmers, produce more food, export to large markets, so that we can make our farmers sustainable. We need to train these farmers, and if you build it, they will come. Intervale is a really good example of that, and so we've been looking at that model without a true incubator space at the moment. My farm, Boardman Hill, serves that, but it's not intended to do so, because I don't have the critical mass of young people with a mentor farmer that can really grow these young businesses over
and
the long haul.
Their food future too, right?
Yes,
like
and so you've got the food center that would, and actually that's one of the pieces of pharmacy, was to bring new and emerging farmers that are struggling to even sometimes find a space at the farmer's market.
Feet wet.
Not do by speculation, but grow by contract and feed people and create a network that builds community within that network of small farmers.
Right, and then literally the technical components of farming too, right? Like how to plan your crops and what you're doing in a way that you can predict a yield that fulfills your commitment. So it's like those are the really nuanced parts, I think, of the food system that's so fun, I think, in our day-to-day, right, to be thinking and seeing all the angles. And as you said, there's sort of informally, there's new generation of folks that are coming and getting access to land. Like I'm thinking of Sage and Shrewsbury, like they've done some great work with helping incubate farmers, but we need more of it, and having that dedicated space. And so I think that's like an exciting aspect of, as you said, the Farmers Food Center, the mission and the expansion, but you need all those parts and pieces to be feeding into the whole of it, right? Like if you can build a center and you can have, a lot of food, local support, but then if there's not farmers growing the food, then we're missing parts
and then
of the puzzle.
From that, it's still in the background, but then without seed.
Yeah.
Because anybody that orders seed realizes the prices are on a steep curve, and there a lot of varieties are no longer available.
Right. So seed sovereignty.
Seed sovereignty, seed staving, having our own supply of seed, our own supply of markets, farmers,
Right.
It makes communities healthier, not just physically, but economically.
Right. The relationship exchange with all those
And
understandings.
and it also makes a community resilient and sustainable.
Right. And then, so I'm thinking one of our next topics here is the one that we're most actively, in the midst of right now, but that's the building out of a commercial kitchen space to grow the value-added businesses. So there's sort of, being in Vermont, right? Like we have a limited growing season and limited, abundant, but the crops that grow here are specific to our region, and so to extend the availability of those crops, and even just to innovate, right? There's need for processing, and that can mean everything from just like chopping things to freeze, so they fit in the freezer, and that you can capture those carrots or whatever it is, right? Beyond the growing season, it could be making like jams and salsas, freezing berries, all those kind of things, so that this phase of our campus expansion that we're most actively working on is building of this kitchen. And as you mentioned, we've been super successful lately, and grateful to all of our community partners, Cedar and Reddick and others that have been supporting us along the way here in the region and then at the state level, to secure funding to once again own our food future and build out this next facility. But that's really a key piece of the year-round resiliency, right? And just
exactly, and
having that.
You go into a supermarket, and you can get virtually everything from all over the world. And so we did a survey of co-ops within the state. Their largest growing segment was frozen foods.
Yep.
And so by offering, and some local farms actually did this, where grew beans, had CSA's summer for cash flow, grew beans, froze them, and sold them at the farmer's market.
Wow.
Wouldn't it be great to be able to have beans, broccoli, berries, virtually everything,
Right.
Fresh, frozen, local food available at one place? And collectively, the Vermont Farmers Market is a supermarket.
Yeah. It's a supermarket.
And we depend on each other.
Sure.
We're not competition.
Right.
We are cooperating, just like car dealerships gather. They do not want to be separated and off by themselves. They want comparative shopping. They want personalities, not just product.
That's just natural, right? And that's how things.
people.
Yeah, that's how things work, right? So, and then within that new kitchen facility, to the wonderful opportunities, we have our small commercial kitchen space that we're outgrowing, right, in the food center right now. But this will offer more opportunities to do like culinary training, and folks can get specific skills in that aspect of the food system, right? Like the preparing and the processing to get it to the more year-round piece. So that's an exciting aspect of this.
So as you build markets, and then the kitchens build, commercial kitchen shared use builds efficiency and capacity to serve those larger markets, then you need the training piece to have employees ready to step in and become part of these growing businesses.
Right, and then it's a scale, right? Because like to feed all of us as much as we can, right, to get that 12% marker moving
it's
more.
It's not going to be us alone.
Right, we have to be able to scale and do production at a scale so that places where we all eat in the community, right, like whether schools, like hospital, right, any business, the restaurant business, which, we've been so excited to be working with so many of our local restaurants through Everyone Eats this past year, and those relationships developing and recognizing how this is what it looks like, right, to build more infrastructure, meaning both the networks and webs of working together, as well as the actual capacity to store food and grow it at scale and know that it will reach where it needs to be. So that's pretty, that's an exciting moment, and it's really getting at, like you were saying, just being able to, grow our capacity to feed ourselves on a year-round basis, establish businesses and farms that are economically viable. And
that's how you preserve farmland. Not through conservation. Through economic viability.
Activity, And then the next phase, which, is not, we have our current phase, but the next phase of our expansion, well, there could be multiple, right? It's multidimensional, but building a storage and aggregation facility as well. So just literally different freezer, climate controlled, right? Like cool storage so that we have. That
would give us, and actually this goes back to Bill Clark years ago. He goes, Irene would be a perfect example. And now with COVID, another example. But Bill foresaw this, that we need to have a facility, a storage capacity to be able to feed people somewhere central to virtually every community. And so, but that also provides infrastructure, needed infrastructure for new and emerging farmers, and even some farmers that have been in it for about 10 years.
Right.
Because to build that infrastructure individually is so expensive.
Right, right, and then you lose some of that synergy and innovation that by having that
exactly
central
by
point.
people talking and getting together,
and just getting together
and sharing ideas. That's why the Vermont Farmers Market, the Rutland Farmers Market, is so successful. Is we have, under Bill's leadership, cultivated an attitude of everyone is welcome. Because we are not competing with each other.
Right, we need all of us.
We need all of us, and that has brought more buy-in from the community.
Yeah.
You know, we always go, a table at a farmer's market has two sides.
Yeah.
The side that me as a farmer is standing at is not the important side. The important side is where the customer is standing.
The receiving end.
And so we've always, at the food center, we started this, and I hope we are forever. We want ownership of buy-in from the community so they feel like they are the owners. The board of directors, you as the executive director, we're just employees of a larger community trying to build out a better system.
Exactly, and I think we've just looking again right at these sheets and all the names and everybody, it's truly, it's
pretty
there.
amazing. It's
we're
so much fun
excited
to look at
grow
that.
it. It is, and I think, as we all know, we're all on temporary hiatus from being in our physical space on campus, but we're working diligently with the state and all the agencies to get the building, the environmental issue cleaned up and get back in there so that we're reclaiming our space and it's, even safer than it was before. And then what I think we're excited about, the farmers market can move back to their home. We're all, actively pushing that as much as possible to reopen next winter.
And we signed up for that. That's we did not want to invest this kind of money until we knew, is it going to be a good investment? Is there anything there?
Right. And it's knowledge is power, right? So now we've empowered to know that there's, environmental cleanup that needs to happen and access the resources to do it. So that's what we're in the midst of. So it's it's so fun thinking about how how active our community already is, and that we have this central location, and that we're growing it, and so there's just more dimensions and more ways that people can participate in it. And I'm thinking in terms of our series here. So as we said, this is our first show in our series of Food for Thought. Greg and I kind of going through the history and the why here. But next episode, we'd love to do a tour of campus. So really get down there and help show everybody that we know the big green building that we're eager to get back into. But there's so much more going on at the Farm Center too, from our Rotary Educational Greenhouses, the building that's actively being expanded, where we're operating out of right now, which is a separate building, and the future storage, but all of those pieces on our campus, and just giving everybody that visual to see.
When this started, when we wrote this, because I'm a keeper of paper, I'm not a writer of paper, but the farmers market prior to the Winter Farmers Market, the gross annual sales were $350,000.
Okay.
When they jumped to almost 700,000 after the winter market started. The first year we moved in, 2012, it was $1.2 million. Wow. And in 2015 or 2016, the numbers were $2 million. And with a multiplier effect of 2.6 million, the economic benefit of the farmers market in Rutland County, not counting farm stands and other sales, was over $5 million. Wow. And that's economic growth.
And there's so much more potential, like you said too, right?
Yeah, and now we're only at 12%.
Yep. And that's what we're here to serve, is the potential, and as you said, really be a vehicle for that community's energy and want to own our food future and build it together and for future generations. So that's what we're up to. So we're very grateful to be here and be able to have our kickoff episode here, and stay tuned. We have lots planned in celebration of our 10-year anniversary. So as we head into our growing season, we'll be keeping everyone updated on that, and just celebrating with the community what we've built here together for the past 10 years.
And thank you, all of Rutland, all of the Rutland region, all of the folks that participate in all the different programs that exist in Rutland County.
That's right.
And thanks to all the farmers.
All the farmers that feed us.
Yep.
Great. Thanks.
Cool.